I'm so excited to have Adrienne Irizarry here today. She is going to go through so much conversation specifically about menopause, perimenopause, and what's going on. Some of those things that you've been thinking about, like why do I get angry or have a shorter fuse? Why do I feel tired? What's going on? She's going to be able to answer it. Hi, Adrienne.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Adrienne Irizarry, HWH, is owner of Moon Essence and a cycle alchemist and holistic women's health practitioner with an East Asian medicine specialty. She believes in empowering women through education in her practice and through her podcast, Reproductive Rebel. Using her background as a certified acutonics practitioner, certified peristeam hydrotherapist, professional herbalist, and Chinese nutrition therapist, she helps to restore balance in the body, reducing menstrual symptoms, improving fertility, and easing the symptoms of life transitions, which is what she's going to be talking about today. Attending to the physical, emotional, and energetic body, Adrienne's unique approach to care holds the whole person and catalyzes deep healing in every phase of life. Thank you so much for being here today.
I'm so excited to be here. I love conversations like this.
And on top of it, we've had a few. I've been on your podcast a few times. We can post that underneath in the description as well so people can take a listen to your podcast and have that as well. But what I love most about you, besides how amazing you are as a person, and you're actually going through this process while recently having a baby,
Yes.
which is a double whammy. On top of that, you bring the Eastern side, the Eastern medicine, the Chinese medicine into that. And that is something that I have no idea how I would even do. So tell us a little bit about yourself and then let's discuss all things perimenopause and menopause.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. So I started my journey with a lot of frustration and a lot of negative outcomes through the Western medical model. This is not to demonize the Western medical model in any way. It is beautiful for acute care, but a lot of times we're only offered surgery or hormones as solutions to everything,
Mhm.
not just a wide array of things, like literally everything. And there's a lot of stops on that bus before you actually need to seek some of those interventions. And I get a lot of questions from women about like hormone replacement therapy when they are in their perimenopausal and menopausal phases of their life. Are these things going to make my symptoms better? And it seems like a quick fix, cure all. And for some people, it's necessary, but like it's specific cases because our body's designed to have this hormonal transition take place. So I create education. I see myself as an educator first and a practitioner with practitioner skills or a practitioner second,
Mhm.
really and truly, because a lot of times there are a lot of questions that we ask Dr. Google, for example, because
Yeah.
whatever it is that our practitioner suggested to us like doesn't feel aligned for some reason.
Mhm.
And sometimes we don't even have the words for why. We just know in our gut that it doesn't feel aligned or like there might be other answers or something else. And they want to find out what that something else is. And I work in all of those spaces. So when I was struggling all through my life with challenges in my reproductive health, Western medicine often left me with more questions than solutions, and the solutions that I got had a lot of negative consequences.
What were the negative consequences?
I had a heart attack at 25 because they put me on birth control for endometriosis. So that'd be one.
Oh my goodness. And it was induced because of the contraception?
Yeah. When I went in to the hospital, because I was so young, I was really gaslit. Like they didn't even take me into the emergency room. I had sat there for like 2 hours and I'm like, this is not a busy night. Like, I feel like I should have seen somebody by now. And the woman at the front desk is like, oh, you're just having a panic attack. Go home. And I said, you're not a medical professional. Please put me in the queue to be triaged. And there was a little bit of verbal disagreement there. And so I got bold, and it's a little out of character for me, but when the double doors opened that release people from the emergency room, the door opened and I scooted through and I went straight to the nurses station. And of course, I'm not supposed to be there. So everybody
Mhm.
like got alerted and came running over. And the doctor that was at the head of the ER that night was like, "What are you doing? You're not supposed to be back here." And I could see security out of the corner of my eye. And I was like, "Listen, I'm not here to create any issues, but I think I'm having a heart attack. The woman at the front desk told me to go home, but I assure you I need to see a medical professional. Can somebody please triage me?"
Wow.
And the doctor took me into a room and my blood pressure was 151 over 100. And she goes, "Oh." And I found myself on a gurney whizzing down a hallway, and she was like jogging to keep up beside the gurney. And the first question she asked me was, "Are you on birth control?" And I
Mm.
said, "Yes." And she goes, "I'm going to do my best to get you out of here tonight." She said, "But the first thing I want you to do when you go home is to throw the pill packet in the trash." And it was
Oh.
like right at the start of that era where there were a lot of people that were experiencing deep vein thrombosis and emotional disturbances on Yaz and Yasmin. I wasn't in the Yaz group,
Mhm.
but there were other birth controls during that time frame that were also creating clots and strokes and all of those other things because birth control is a class 1 carcinogen.
Mhm.
So that was like my first huge wake up call. Like I had had problems with my reproductive health all the way through, but the only solution I was ever offered was birth control.
Mhm.
So after I had that really explosive, like, holy crap, I need to choose, I need to choose differently.
Yeah.
I started really educating myself about my cycle and how I could work with my cycle naturally. Still hadn't found Chinese medicine yet, but became a lot more aware around my body, its rhythms, what I needed to do. Ended up having my daughter and had a horrible postpartum recovery, a beautiful pregnancy,
Mm.
horrible postpartum recovery. I got pregnant by accident because I was
Mhm.
still in this adjusting, coming up birth control experience. Um, and, I don't regret her for a moment, but like the postpartum recovery with her was
Mm.
just next level atrocious. And that is when I found Chinese medicine. And I had done all of the Western stuff. They had offered me hormones, they offered me birth control, they offered me an IUD because once I stopped nursing, I started bleeding and I didn't stop.
Oh.
And I was like 6 months of consistent red, no stop kind of bleeding, and found an acupuncturist because I didn't know anything about acupuncture at the time.
Mhm.
And in 6 sessions with some really horrific tasting herbs, but 6 sessions of acupuncture, and the bleeding stopped. And I
Wow.
looked at her because I felt like the clouds had parted and the sun came out. And I was like, "Kelly, you need to teach me all the things. Like, I just
Mhm.
want to know everything I can." And I started asking her a ton of questions. She'd give me book references. I would devour the book before my next appointment. And I was seeing her like every 2 weeks.
Oh. Wow.
So I would come in. At one point, she was like lending me textbooks out of her schooling library, the things that she had accumulated through her own training. And I would
Mhm.
read the book and I would bring it back to her. And she goes, "Oh my goodness." And I had all kinds of questions. And she was so gracious in teaching me and like cultivating and nurturing my curiosity and my enthusiasm for
Mhm.
this discipline. And I really truly attribute my career to her nurturing that
Mhm.
curiosity because I have found all the answers that I've never been able to find in Western
Mhm.
medicine in the texts of the Eastern medicine systems. And I say systems plural because I have training in Western Chinese and Ayurvedic materia medica, and I always feel like Ayurveda and Chinese medicine have a lot of the answers that I'm looking for. So, fast
And you bring up
forward.
a good point too, because with the Western medicine, at least for the women that I help, the over 50 going through perimenopause to postmenopause, the the number one thing that happens is, we've all been there. We go to the doctor, we say, I'm tired, I don't feel well, I feel moody, things are going wrong, or I have depression. First thing they do is give you an antidepressant, or they say, oh, this is just what getting old is, and there is no actual deep dive into what is going on from a holistic perspective, what's going on as women as we enter into perimenopause.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and again, that's why I specialized in this area because I felt like I was getting a lot of those answers as a younger person and now as somebody who is in perimenopause, because perimenopause can be 7 to 15 years
Mm-hmm.
depending on somebody how they've lived their life.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see different numbers in different texts. Some say 7 to 10, some say 7 to 12, some say 7 to 15. But it really does depend on how you have spent your chi or your vital energy through your life.
Mm-hmm.
If you've always been a pedal to the floor, push, 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 even on the days that I know my body is screaming at me to stop and take a nap, but I push through anyway. And a lot of us are guilty of that. Okay. I'm not
Yes, yeah.
saying this as a person that has it all figured out. We've all done it,
Mm-hmm.
right? But if that's your default more than not, oftentimes you can see some of these changes start to happen earlier than somebody who has honored some of those body rhythms in a different way. But a lot of us in Western culture aren't taught to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so
And
Eastern
how would Eastern medicine, for example, look at you being that busy, or not taking a moment? How would you know that and treat that using Western medicine?
I was gonna say Western medicine doesn't have a lot of solutions for that. And what you were describing with being tired and I don't feel quite right and maybe they're not as far as like true clinical depression, but they feel their mood is depressed over what they know is their normal benchmark, which
Mm-hmm.
is so common during this phase.
Yes.
They'll go to the doctor, they'll get tests run, and they'll go, "Oh no, your numbers are fine.
Mm.
You're
Yep.
normal." Right? And normal's a spectrum, right? Yes, there are certain clinical norms in terms of here is your high and low number, here are your optimal numbers in between. And often you have to go to a functional medicine professional to see the functional numbers in the middle. But if you're in the green zone, they'll tell you you're fine. But if you're like a little towards the high end or a little towards the low end outside of that optimal zone, you will feel stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I work in that whole gray area in between where people are like, oh, like I know I don't feel right, but I can't put my finger on it. Or maybe I'm just tired because I feel sluggish, because I have brain fog, because I am feeling a little more anxious or a little more depressed, or both these
Mm-hmm.
days. I just have a lot going on in my life. And yes, that is part of it. That is the hard part of discerning what is the catalyst, and especially in the early stages of that perimenopausal transition, because we're going through the beginning stages of a hormone transition with a huge load of responsibilities on our
Mm-hmm.
shoulders. We have mortgages, we have kids, sometimes we're dealing with young kids and aging parents at the same
Mm-hmm.
time. Like there's a lot of stuff that's going on situationally in this phase of life. And so you start asking questions like, am I tired? Am I this? Am I that? Eastern medicine looks at this phase of our life as coming into second spring, which is such a beautiful way to look at it. Because really, like, if you look at the memes online and all of that kind of stuff, like, it makes it seem like perimenopause and menopause are gloom and doom.
Mm-hmm.
And you're set up to feel like complete garbage through the entire process. It's going to be miserable. It's something to dread. But like it fits that narrative of like the aging process is something to be avoided at all costs rather than embraced.
Mm-hmm.
And I love how Eastern culture actually reveres the wisdom of this phase of life. You know, sometimes people refer to it like maiden mother crone and you're entering your crone phase. Some people hate that word because they feel old. But really, it's the wise woman years of your life. You have lived, you have experienced things. You are here to impart that wisdom for the next generation to be successful,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's such a different frame of looking at this phase of life. Second spring is a new beginning. So, right around 35, we start being extended the invitation. So this is where I was talking about like are we pushing, are we actually listening? And honestly, our culture does not invite us to listen
Mm-hmm.
to our bodies. We're just supposed to numb out
Mm-hmm.
and escape from anything that makes us uncomfortable. We're supposed to be like organic robots and just push through no matter what and live in spring and summer energy all the time. My favorite Lao Tzu quote has to do with nature never rushing, but everything gets done.
Mm, I love that.
Right? I do too, because we have 4 seasons outside of our window. We have 4 seasons in our menstrual cycle when we're in our bleeding years, but we also have 4 seasons in our life, in the overall continuum of our life,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I love the way that Eastern medicine looks at this stage of life because it's a new beginning. And if we're really gracious and gentle with ourselves and compassionate
Mm-hmm.
for how we show up during this phase, it is a form of rebirth and new beginning because you're no longer in the years of your life where you're giving of your vital chi
Mm-hmm.
to the creation of life because you're no longer in your childbearing years. You are now pouring that vital energy into your life. And a lot of women start at the very beginning of this whole process asking questions like, do I want to change careers? I want to travel more. I want to finish the degree that I didn't get to finish because I got pregnant while I was in college. Or I've liked this profession, but there's something else that's really calling me because they've lived their life for a while now and they realize that there are different things that light them up inside. They've been through the birth experience and they realize that they're feeling called to work with people who need support during birth, for example. Like, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
life is calling to them in a different way. And it's a new beginning, which is I think, a really beautiful way of looking at it instead of, oh my gosh, I'm old and I've got a foot in the grave and I now have the 11s in my forehead.
Yeah.
I mean, we all get them
Yeah.
eventually. Like, so we end up re-envisioning
Mm-hmm.
and dreaming into our life rather than feeling like it's the end of our life.
I love that. I love
Me
it.
too.
Yeah. So
Me
how
too.
when somebody comes to you, they usually have symptoms. What kind of symptoms in perimenopause, postmenopause do you, or even menopause do they have? And you
Okay.
probably want to also explain what the differences are, just so that, everybody is on the same page.
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly where I was going to start is perimenopause is the journey.
Mhm.
Perimenopause is the journey. So that's the 7 to 12 year or 7 to 15, depending on what you're looking at for literature. Menopause is one day, which is mind blowing because most people think menopause is the journey, but it's not.
Mhm.
You're still in perimenopause when your period appears and then disappears for a few months. And then it reappears again and then it disappears, and the periods in between one bleed and the next get elongated because you're not ovulating as often. You have to ovulate in order to have a bleed.
Mhm.
So your body is essentially telling itself that you're not going to be having children any longer and you don't need to release an egg. And the spans of time in between that egg release get further and further apart. The bleed should be getting lighter and lighter also. So when you do actually bleed, it might be 3 days instead of five. It might be 2.5 days, or maybe the flow itself is like over 5 days, but you're really not even getting to like a medium flow. It's just kind of sputtering along and then it stops. And it's because your body is phasing out of this needing to be a blood-rich, supple environment to nourish a baby.
Mhm. So what would
So,
you tell somebody that is getting a constant heavy flow? Because
mhm,
that does not fit into what you've just described. But
yes,
I know I have clients, participants in my own program, who have experienced the heavy bleeds for, over a week to the point
yes,
of becoming anemic.
yes. I do see that a lot. That often comes with overspending the chi in your account. So when we are working really hard and we're not getting enough rest and we're not creating meaningful, so this is the invitation we get at 35,
Mhm.
is to evaluate because we start noticing our stamina is different.
Mhm.
We need to create some meaningful periods of rest. And if we just like soldier through them and push through them, by the time we get to 40, 42, because in Chinese medicine, women's bodies move in 7 year cycles. By the time you get to 40, 42, because these transitions can happen a couple years on either side, you start becoming more yin deficient, meaning that the fluids in your body begin to dry up. This is why you need heavier face cream, and this is why your skin might feel drier or your personal moisture is drier, and so on. So if we're still not making those meaningful changes at 42, by the time we hit 49
Mhm.
and we're really in the heart of the okay, my bleed is really changing now. Often we can see more of that flood bleeding rather than that petering off that I'm describing because the body is lacking some of the vital energy it needs to control the flow of the faucet.
Mm.
So when in Chinese medicine they refer to it as spleen qi deficiency. There could be a yang deficiency in there too, but generally it's spleen qi deficiency. So this is a lot of mental overwork meets not enough rest. And often there's also a my digestion isn't working super well and I feel bloated component that all
Mm.
are working together. Is this solvable from a Chinese medicine standpoint? Yes.
Mhm.
It takes herbs, some lifestyle changes, some internal reflection around where am I burning the candle at both ends still?
Mm. Mhm.
What can I create some healthy boundaries and structure around? So that's where the cycle alchemist comes out in me as I start talking to people not only about, yes, diet, lifestyle, herbs. That's a very like practitioner protocol sounding
Mhm.
approach, and I can do that part. But I find the real healing comes in that self-reflection because when we step into perimenopause, that introspective side becomes exponentially more important
Mm.
because the places where we've always picked up the shoes and just taken them up the stairs without a complaint, and then one day that pair of shoes is like a match to gasoline, and you look at your
Mhm.
partner and you're like, why am I the only person that can take these fucking shoes up the stairs? Why? Right? And then you like have this out of body moment where you're like, why am I freaking out right now? But those shoes just completely enrage you. And it's because you've been in an estrogen saturated environment internally
Mhm.
for most of your life. And estrogen makes everything softer. You're able to sweep things under the rug a little bit that are irritating to you. You're less of a powder keg around things that really make you mad. There's a lot more of that for the good of the people to keep the peace. I'm going to do this thing and I'm not going to say anything about it, right? And then you hit this phase of your life where the veil of estrogen is lowering and you don't have as much of that softening hormone anymore. So it's like, what the heck? You are a capable human being. Why am I? You are able-bodied with two hands and 2 feet. Why can't you do this too? Which is a logical thing to say.
Yeah.
But what our male counterparts, if you're in a heteronormative relationship, what our male counterparts don't understand is now you are no longer having this softening hormone helping you to keep the peace.
Mhm.
You are now essentially delivering the news just as A to B linearly as they do.
Mhm.
But it's abrasive to them because they don't see, they one, nobody educates them about this, and
Mhm.
two, you're both navigating hormone changes usually right around the same time because they're starting to do their own andropausal journey. That's
Mhm.
a story for another day. But because you're both going through this transition at the same time, you have to like renegotiate
Mhm.
communication. So
Mhm.
inside, when you're in your transition, and it doesn't matter whether you're in the early stages, like 35 to 42, or if you're in the I'm close to my non-bleeding years, 49 to 55, you're you're experiencing enough of a change that the way you filter information coming into your body, the way you express it going back out, is shifting because your brain is doing this absolutely incredible thing and rewiring itself around your new hormone pattern.
Mhm. And I
So,
love again that you put that very positive, this is your new spring, right? New clean
yeah.
spring. Yes. Yeah. It's like you are a butterfly, literally becoming your caterpillar, and you are becoming a butterfly.
Yes, I love that analogy because when you're in 42 to 49, you really are in the soup, in the chrysalis at that point. And a lot of people feel that at some sort of a visceral level. They're like, "Ugh, I don't know who I am right now. I feel stuck. I don't know what I want." And that can make you feel anxious because there's this unknown. It can make you feel depressed because things that used to bring you joy don't anymore.
Mm,
So those emotional symptoms can be a byproduct of the fact that you are going through a metamorphosis and literally transforming into a new version of you.
mm,
It's no different for anybody who's listening to this who's had a baby.
mm,
It's no different than when you step across the birth threshold through that portal and you come out the other side and you're like, wow, I birthed a baby, but I birthed a brand new version of me at the same time. Wow, this
mm,
is a whole like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. You know what I mean? Because you just think that you're going to give birth to a baby, you're going to have a baby on the other end of it, but you're still going to be you.
mhm,
And a lot of times, postpartum moms go through the same thing. And then, if you're in this phase of your life at the same time you're going through
mhm.
postpartum, you're going to feel this at a much more amplified level.
And that was actually you because you had a baby in perimenopause.
Yes. Yes, I spent many months in the soup of that chrysalis because I birthed my son after an 8-year journey with secondary infertility, and I really was shaped into the practitioner that I am through that whole journey. I mean, we weren't trying the entire 8 years. It was kind of on and off because I was building my practice, and, that's a long story, but,
Mhm,
it was an 8-year journey, and there was a lot of healing, both me and my husband, through that process to get to my son. At the time of this recording, he's 11 months and he's
oh,
amazing. And I wouldn't trade any aspect of that for anything, but I came out of it and I was like, oh my God, I don't even know who I am anymore.
mm,
And I started like trying to figure out how my practice was going to run. And, not just because I had a little person, but because I was different.
mm,
And I had to sit in the chrysalis soup, which was really
Mhm.
uncomfortable. And surrender is the word that I would say during perimenopause, in your menopausal transition. And like I said, menopause is one day, okay? It is the day that you have been 365 days with no period.
Mhm.
That is menopause. The next morning you wake up, you are postmenopausal.
Mhm.
Okay, that is really important because a lot of people put perimenopause and menopause together.
Yeah, it's usually called the menopausal transition instead of the perimenopausal journey. Yes,
Yes.
definitely.
Yes. And that's I think really important when we're talking about this as a second spring. It is a season of your life
Mhm.
where you are birthing anew. You are coming out of the chrysalis soup and you are starting to break out of that shell. And once you have crossed that threshold, you have a completely different neural network in your brain because you don't have as many estrogen receptors there anymore as you did before. Your brain actually works with your new hormonal cadence that
Mhm.
you're going to have from then through the end of your life. And you are a slightly more testosterone rich environment, which makes Alicia's job really easy because here we are now working with things that support this beautiful lifting and weight bearing experience. And you're going to see those results differently
Mhm.
than you did before because estrogen is your softening and fluffing hormone.
Mhm.
I
So for
can't
me, when
wait.
like, yeah, no, like I get it, I get it. But for me, when people come to me, when women come to me, right? I am the Western side. I am the science research. That is
Yep.
mine is let's exercise, get the eating. But that one side that I always ask for help, such as having you out here today to talk, is on the side of um, the mental or the other sides that I cannot speak to, the Eastern side of the equation. So I know what I do when people come to me and they say they've got hot flashes or they
Mhm.
don't feel as toned or they've gained the belly fat because those are big, or not sleeping well even. Those are the
Mhm.
big symptoms that come to me. What symptoms do people tend to come to you with, and how do you help them resolve those symptoms?
Very similar symptoms. And it's one of the reasons why I loved our podcast together, Alicia, because we talked about this blend of science and it's where my new identity as a psychoalchemist kind of rose out of is it is a blend of the science with the fact that there's an energetic psychology side
Mhm.
of this that a lot of people aren't looking at. And so, if we're going to talk about it from the science perspective, through this hormonal transition, belly fat converts to fuel faster, which is part of why that's where it gets stored, right?
Mhm.
But if we look at it from an Eastern medicine standpoint and we look at it from a an energetic standpoint, it's a protective mechanism.
I love that.
And a lot of people who are holding emotions that they're not addressing, whether they're not comfortable, they haven't given themselves space, maybe they just don't have the tools for whatever reason to address those big, deep things that they're holding onto, they will hold it in their abdomen.
Mm.
So it's a combination of the science of what is physiologically happening at that time
Mhm.
period, meeting the fact that this neural network rewiring that you're having with the change in your hormones is actually inviting you to look at some of these things, to let go of what no longer serves you.
Mm.
Sometimes that is a complete identity shift. Sometimes it's relationships, and that's a
Mhm.
hard one.
Yes,
You're going to
yes.
see more women in this phase of life get divorced than any other time, not just because their kids, for the most part, are like graduated and out of the house, but because there are things that they're struggling to resolve with a partner who, if the partner's not willing to meet them halfway,
Mhm.
that's the only answer,
Mm.
right? So sometimes partners will grow together, will get to know each other, start dating each other again, and like they have a brand new relationship because they're both biochemically different versions of themselves,
Mhm.
right? So one thing that is really hard, and I see a lot, is there are a lot of women who are, you know, they start going through these changes, they start asking everybody for advice.
Mm.
Should I go on hormone replacement therapy? Should I do this? Should I do that? What am I doing wrong? Do I need to work out harder at the gym, right? And it's an external process, but really the transition is internal.
Oh, I love that.
And when we get really, really honest about things that piss us off and aren't aligned, right?
Mhm.
And we know don't feel aligned. That could be career, personal life, too many clothes in your closet. Like it doesn't matter what it is. Like if we get really honest with what we need, and that's a hard one for a lot of women because we tend to push our needs to the side. We prioritize everybody else in our life ahead of ourselves, and we hit the bottom of the priority list. But because we've
Yeah.
done that for 20 some odd years leading up to this transition, that's also where the fuse gets lit really easily because there's resentment that builds up around that. We hold that as belly fat in our abdomen.
Mhm.
When we sit with it and we go, okay, I have a lot of rage around this. I feel guilty that I have a lot of rage around this. That's the first step,
Oh, I love that.
right? Because it's
Mhm.
being really truthfully honest and
I think
real.
for yeah, I think for some people also it's terrifying. Think about it. Our whole lives, we work to be this version of ourselves that, we create, whether it's for external, like how societally we're good parents, or we're good, we
Hmm.
own the house and we pay our mortgage and we have this career and we do all these things. And we built that up for years and years. This is everything we've worked towards. And then to get to a point where all of a sudden that doesn't, it's not even all of a sudden, it starts to happen slowly. But again, like you were mentioning, the signals you're not necessarily listening to because you're busy living that life
Yeah.
that is the one that you've been creating. I think it comes down to as well this absolute fear, like this
Yes.
doesn't align with me anymore. I have to change everything about myself, or give up certain people that no longer serve me, or that now I feel differently towards. I think it's very scary. It is a beautiful transition, but it's also, I'm sure that that caterpillar feels some pain as those wings are growing.
Hmm.
It can be a painful process, and a scary one to confront change.
Yes, it is. And I'm not downplaying any aspect of that.
Mm-hmm.
Change can be scary. The unknown is scary, especially when, you and a partner, for example, might have been building towards your retirement
Mm-hmm.
and you're looking at this later stage in your life with this picture in your mind of what you think it's going to be. And then you start getting there and you go, holy shit, I don't know if this feels good to me anymore. What am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
But the more that we ignore, sometimes the pieces about fear is actually mirroring back to us our deepest desires. And because society has created constructs around that,
Mm-hmm.
that's why we feel the fear because we know the truth isn't in alignment with that expectation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really deeply ingrained one for women.
Mm.
Deeply, deeply ingrained. And building the career is great as long as it still remains in integrity with who you feel you are on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Because close to 50, we go through if anybody is into astrology, there's like another really big astrological like shift in your life. Saturn return at 28. Usually a lot of people see changes in social networks, careers. There might be a big health crisis. There'll be something that is a catalyst for them to go in a different direction. I know there was for me.
Mhm.
I got divorced and was diagnosed with celiac and
Oh.
ended up completely relocating 300 miles from where I grew up and starting my life all over again. So for me, it definitely happened before I even knew this was a thing.
Mhm.
There's another big shift that happens right around 50, and 52 is usually the benchmark. And it's an energetic shift around coming into alignment with your soul's purpose. And I know that sounds
Mhm.
very woo for some people who are listening to this, but we came into this world to do something, to give something, to up level the world around us in some way. And when we're out of integrity with that, it will show up really hard right around then.
Mm.
And so this is where that introspection and self-reflection is really important. Your symptoms will get less severe. The heavy bleeding, the fatigue, the brain fog, the anxiety, the rage. All of those things will dramatically soften in their experience for you
Mhm.
when you do that internal work. I'm really considering starting to do more work in the shadow side of things so
Mm.
that people can really sit with and come face to face with and have a safe container to sit with what doesn't feel in alignment for them anymore, because it's where we have dissonance is where the pain points come in.
Mhm.
And the more we speak our truth and we're in alignment with our truth, which is very terrifying for some of us.
Mhm.
And that's okay. It's not always comfortable. Like I think about that analogy of the lotus flower has to push up through the mud in order
Mm.
to bloom. Coming through the mud is and the muck and the mire is like a whole process, just like the butterfly and the chrysalis. But once you keep reaching upwards towards the sunshine,
Mhm.
it allows you to bloom.
Mhm.
And so I feel like that is what the perimenopausal journey, the whole journey, invites us to do. And, getting into healthy movement practices like what you do, Alicia,
Mhm.
like, building just daily walking into your routine so that and slow walking, not power walking, so that your
Mhm.
primal brain doesn't think it's being chased by a tiger. That can help the cortisol levels that rise because you're not under duress.
Mhm.
And, that will help with the release of abdominal weight. So, like, there's lots of things where I see that intersection and I work at that intersection of, yes, there's a lot of things that you can do with diet and lifestyle.
Mhm.
But if we also ask some of these deeper questions, because the difference between Western and Eastern medicine is Western medicine pulls the whole body apart into a sum of parts. It's
Mhm.
like ingredients in a cookie recipe. I see the alchemist side of me sees all of those ingredients mixed together, and this is how the recipe is essentially cooking.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that. And you have a program actually around this, don't you?
I
Tell,
do.
tell us about your program.
Yeah, so I have a program, it's called Turning Tide. And it is specifically geared towards perimenopause and wherever you are on that journey, whether this is the early stages or you are on the doorstep of, I am literally counting the months that I haven't had my bleed. I'm almost there. Like, it
Mhm.
doesn't matter where you are on that continuum.
Mhm.
Being able to sit with this program, it's 4 weeks. It is a tea ritual. It is a
Mhm.
sound bath file.
Mhm.
It is journal prompts to get you thinking about this self-reflection and giving you a framework to intentionally slow down. Because again, we put ourselves on the bottom of that priority list.
Mhm.
And this, some people just feel like they need to be given permission. It's like when they go to the doctor, they go to the practitioner. I use my acupuncturist for this all the time, and I'll come home and I'll say to my husband, "So Kim told me that I need to slow down." Because if I say it, he'll be like, "Okay, Adrienne." But like if another practitioner is advising that I slow down, he's like, "Oh, okay." Like somebody else is seeing that you're struggling right now.
Oh.
I love him. But sometimes like we feel that way though. We need
Uh-huh.
somebody else to give us permission to prioritize
Yes.
ourselves. It's
Yeah,
a narrative that we totally
absolutely.
have to work through. But
Yeah.
um turning tide is that permission slip for you to create some intentionality around how you start your day. Maybe you're doing it at the end of your day to be able to decompress a little bit, slow the pace of your whole day down a little bit, and give you some food for thought around, what do I want to do? How do I actually feel inside of my body right now?
Mhm.
Because we get so cerebrally focused with,
Mhm.
this event that we need to go to, and I need to bring this thing to the school, and whose birthday is it this weekend, and like all that kind
Mhm.
of stuff. And we're all in our head, and it gets very easy to get disconnected from this vessel
Mhm.
that we live in. And so turning tide helps you to reconnect with that vessel. How do you actually feel in your heart that day? And here is a little ritual that you can do to give back some energy to yourself so that you can go into your day, or you can decompress from your day with some intentionality.
I love that. I love that. And I know that a lot of my clients, again, I'm more of the physical side of things, right? I'm more
Mhm.
of the nutrition, and not that you're not, but I mean, like, I am the more cerebral side. So I
Yeah.
absolutely have loved having you on to talk about this Eastern side and this shift in our mindset and our way of being for this second spring, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Thank you so much for being on today. Do you have any last words of wisdom for everybody watching here today?
Sure. This journey is one of the most rewarding ones of your life. It is the moment that you have left to hit a reset button on your entire health picture. And when we go through it in kind of a self-serving, us focused way and lean into how we feel in our body, how we feel in our heart, and really honor the truth of what is showing up for us, this can be the most empowering
Mm.
life change you could possibly imagine. And the more that we're integrity with that truth, the more gentle we go through this
Oh,
transition.
I love that. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.